The sand beneath the Colosseum had turned black with blood, but the crowd's hunger for violence had only grown stronger. What started as simple gladiatorial combat had evolved into something far more sinister. Executions so elaborate, so systematically cruel, that even the emperors who ordered them sometimes turned away in disgust. This is the story of how Rome's greatest architectural achievement became humanity's most sophisticated torture chamber, where death wasn't just an outcome, it was an art form, carefully choreographed to extract maximum suffering from every victim while entertaining 50,000 screaming spectators. The morning executions, known as the damnatio ad bestias, transformed the arena into a theater of unimaginable horror. But these weren't random killings. They were elaborate productions that combined Roman mythology with real human agony, creating spectacles that went far beyond anything the world had ever seen. Today, we're descending into the darkest depths of Roman entertainment, where the line between civilization and savagery disappeared entirely. From the underground chambers where victims were prepared for death, to the imperial boxes where emperors orchestrated mass murder, we'll uncover how an entire empire became addicted to human suffering. Before we enter this blood-soaked world, hit subscribe so you don't miss our next journey into history's most disturbing chapters. Now, take your seat in the stands. The gates are opening, and what you're about to witness will forever change how you view the ancient world. The Colosseum's underground chambers, known as the hypogeum, were a maze of tunnels, cages, and preparation rooms where the day's horrors were carefully planned. Here, in the darkness beneath the arena floor, condemned prisoners were sorted like livestock, some destined for quick deaths, others marked for prolonged torture that could last for hours. The Romans had perfected a system of categorizing victims based on their crimes and social status. Political prisoners faced elaborate mythological reenactments. Common criminals were fed to starved beasts. Christians were reserved for the most creative tortures, their deaths designed to mock their faith while entertaining the pagan masses. The preparation process was itself a form of psychological torture. Victims were forced to watch as costumes were fitted, as wild animals were starved and tormented to increase their savagery, as elaborate stage props were constructed for their own deaths. The anticipation of agony was often worse than the agony itself. The beast hunts, or venations, had evolved far beyond simple animal displays. By the 2nd century AD, these had become elaborate ecological warfare, with entire species hunted to extinction to feed Rome's appetite for exotic violence. North African elephants, Caspian tigers, European aurochs, all were systematically exterminated to provide novelty for jaded Roman audiences. The logistics of these hunts were staggering. Professional animal trappers scoured the empire's furthest reaches, risking their lives to capture creatures that would survive just long enough to die in the arena. Entire fleets were dedicated to transporting these living weapons across the Mediterranean, while specialized handlers developed techniques to maximize their killing potential. The animals themselves were deliberately tortured before their arena appearances. Lions were starved for days, their natural hunting instincts sharpened by desperation. Bears were chained in cramped cages and prodded with heated irons to ensure maximum aggression. Even herbivores like elephants were driven to violent madness through systematic abuse. But the true innovation of Roman arena spectacles lay in their theatrical elements. The condemned weren't simply executed. They were forced to participate in elaborate death dramas that perverted classical mythology into instruments of torture. These weren't stories anymore. They were snuff films performed live for mass audiences. The myth of Orpheus, the musician who could charm wild beasts with his song, became a popular execution theme. Prisoners were dressed as the legendary bard and given lyres to play, while starved lions were released into the arena. The cruel irony was deliberate. In myth, animals were tamed by Orpheus's music, but in the arena, they tore him apart while the crowd laughed at the subversion. Prometheus, the titan who stole fire from the gods, provided another template for creative execution. Victims were chained to artificial mountains, while trained eagles or vultures were released to tear at their flesh. The birds were often fitted with metal talons to ensure maximum damage, and the victims were kept alive for hours as their bodies were systematically devoured. The story of Icarus inspired perhaps the most elaborate aerial executions ever devised. Prisoners were fitted with crude wing contraptions and launched from platforms high above the arena floor. Some were simply dropped to their deaths, but others were suspended on nearly invisible wires, creating the illusion of flight before being lowered slowly into the waiting jaws of predators below. Female victims faced gender-specific tortures that combined execution with sexual humiliation. The myth of Pasiphae, who was cursed to desire a bull, was reenacted with mechanical devices and live animals in scenes that blurred the line between execution and pornography. These spectacles served multiple purposes: entertainment, humiliation, and a warning about the consequences of defying Roman moral order. The naumachia, or mock naval battles, represented the ultimate expression of Roman excess. Entire sections of the Colosseum could be flooded to create artificial lakes deep enough for full-sized warships. But these weren't theatrical performances. They were real naval combat with real weapons and guaranteed deaths. The engineering required for these aquatic spectacles was extraordinary. Complex systems of pumps, channels, and reservoirs could flood the arena floor in less than an hour, creating a temporary sea in the heart of Rome. Specialized ships were constructed to fit through the arena's entrances, while thousands of condemned prisoners were trained in naval combat techniques they would use only once. The scale of these naval massacres was breathtaking. Augustus's naumachia in 2 BC featured 30 ships and over 3,000 combatants, all of whom were expected to die for the entertainment of the crowd. The water literally turned red with blood as ships rammed each other, and warriors fought hand-to-hand combat on the decks. The psychological impact of these spectacles extended far beyond the arena itself. Roman children grew up believing that human suffering was entertainment, that the value of life was measured only by its capacity to amuse. Entire generations were raised on a diet of systematic cruelty, their moral development shaped by the normalization of extreme violence. The betting culture around arena spectacles reached obscene proportions. Wealthy Romans would wager enormous sums not just on the outcomes of fights, but on specific details of how victims would die. Professional bookmakers developed complex odds systems for every conceivable aspect of human suffering: how long victims would survive, which animals would deliver killing blows, even the number of screams before death. The economic impact of the arena system was staggering. Entire industries developed around supplying the games with victims, animals, and equipment. Professional slave traders specialized in providing arena fodder, developing networks that spanned continents. Animal importers established trade routes that disrupted entire ecosystems, while weapons manufacturers created specialized equipment designed not for warfare, but for maximizing spectacle value. The social pressure to attend and enjoy these spectacles was immense. Roman citizens who showed disgust or refused to participate were viewed with suspicion, their loyalty to the empire questioned. Expressing sympathy for arena victims was considered unpatriotic and potentially treasonous. Cheering for the most brutal deaths became a way to demonstrate conformity to Roman values. The gladiatorial schools became factories of human misery, where prisoners and slaves were trained not just to fight, but to die in entertaining ways. Trainers developed techniques to ensure that deaths appeared heroic while actually being prolonged and agonizing. The goal was never quick victory, but maximum entertainment value extracted from human suffering. Medical personnel were stationed around the arena not to save lives, but to ensure that victims remained conscious for as long as possible during their torture. Roman doctors had developed sophisticated techniques for treating wounds just enough to prevent quick death, prolonging the agony for the entertainment of the crowd. This medical knowledge was deliberately perverted to maximize rather than minimize human suffering. The arena floor itself was designed to enhance the horror. The sand wasn't just for absorbing blood, it was specially treated with chemicals to prevent quick absorption, ensuring that the gore remained visible throughout the day's events. Hidden chambers beneath the floor contained elaborate mechanical devices that could be raised during executions, adding surprise elements to the suffering. The costume and makeup departments for arena spectacles rivaled those of modern theater productions. Victims were dressed in elaborate costumes that would tear away dramatically during their torture. Makeup was applied to enhance the visual impact of wounds and blood. Every aspect of the victim's appearance was calculated to maximize the entertainment value of their death. The religious justification for these spectacles was carefully constructed by Roman priests and philosophers. Arena deaths were presented as divine justice, with the gods themselves determining the outcome of battles. This religious framework allowed Romans to view even the most brutal torture as morally acceptable, even virtuous. The international scope of the arena system was vast. Roman colonies across Europe, Africa, and Asia all featured their own amphitheaters, each trying to outdo Rome itself in the creativity of their spectacles. Local populations were forced to participate in or attend these events as a demonstration of their loyalty to Roman rule. The emperors themselves became increasingly addicted to the power that arena spectacles provided. Caligula, Nero, and Commodus all used the arena as a stage for their own twisted fantasies, turning imperial power into a license for unlimited cruelty. The arena became a mirror reflecting the moral decay at the heart of the empire. The decline of the arena spectacles came not from moral awakening, but from practical and economic concerns. The cost of maintaining these elaborate productions became unsustainable, as the empire's resources were stretched thin by constant warfare. The supply of exotic animals and prisoners began to dwindle as trade routes became disrupted and conquered territories were exhausted. The rise of Christianity provided a moral framework that condemned the games as fundamentally evil, but this religious opposition took centuries to have any real impact. Even after Constantine's conversion, the games continued in modified forms for decades. The last recorded gladiatorial combat took place in 435 AD, over a century after they were officially banned. The psychological trauma inflicted on both participants and spectators had lasting effects that extended far beyond the end of the games themselves. Roman society had become so thoroughly brutalized by centuries of arena entertainment that violence remained endemic long after the Colosseum fell silent. The legacy of the Roman arena serves as perhaps the most chilling example in human history of how a civilization can systematically transform cruelty into culture. The Romans weren't barbarians. They were highly educated, technologically advanced, and culturally sophisticated. Yet they created forms of entertainment that surpass anything in recorded history for their calculated brutality and systematic dehumanization. Modern archaeological evidence continues to reveal the full scope of arena brutality. Excavations at amphitheater sites across the former Roman Empire have uncovered mass graves, torture devices, and evidence of the industrial scale of these death spectacles. The physical evidence confirms and often exceeds the horror described in historical accounts. The arena system represents a unique form of state-sponsored terrorism designed to maintain social control through fear and spectacle. By making the most extreme forms of violence into popular entertainment, the Roman state ensured that its citizens would be too brutalized and desensitized to challenge imperial authority. As we examine these dark chapters of history, we must confront uncomfortable questions about our own society's relationship with violence as entertainment. The Romans believed they were civilized, advanced, and morally superior to the barbarians they conquered. Yet they created the most systematic and celebrated form of mass entertainment, based on human suffering in recorded history. The blood-soaked sands of the Colosseum have long since been cleaned, but the memory of what happened there remains as a testament to the darkest possibilities of human nature when cruelty becomes culture and suffering becomes spectacle. In remembering these horrors, we honor not just the victims, but all those who have suffered under systems designed to strip away their humanity for the entertainment of others. So tell us, which of these arena horrors do you find most disturbing? The mythological executions, the ecological warfare, or the systematic brutalization of entire generations? Share your thoughts below, and if this journey into Rome's darkest secrets has gripped you, hit subscribe so you don't miss our next descent into history's most terrifying chapters. Until then, remember that the Colosseum may stand silent now, but its lessons about the human capacity for both cruelty and complicity echo through the ages, warning us about the thin line between civilization and barbarism that we must never allow ourselves to cross.